Welcome to Persons of Interest. I am your host, Derek Dockett. In this episode, which is part 2 with Lily Johnson, we pick up discussing Lily's time as a student athlete, but more focusing on her involvement in the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. She was part of that from Missouri State perspective, the conference perspective, and also worked on the national level as well, working with NCAA student athletes from across the country. We also focus on the role that she played in the legislative items in college athletics as part of that committee. We discuss her life after college, her postgraduate work, and what she's doing now after graduation. She details a very interesting stretch of time for her as she was really making plans for her future. And we also discuss what role volleyball has in her life at this point. So without further ado, here's part 2 with Lily Johnson here on Persons of Interest. You're pretty involved in your time as a student athlete, not only classroom, on the court. There's something called SAC, student athlete, not activities. What's the acronym?
Advisory.
I'm blanking. Advisory, Student Athlete Advisory Committee. Wow, I was blanking on it. You think I'd know after being actually somewhat involved, but go figure. You were actually involved in that from not only a Missouri State standpoint, but also a conference standpoint and on a national scale as well. Some of the takeaways that you got from that experience, just anything that stands out in addition to, obviously you made a lot of connections with not just folks from your campus, but from the other Valley schools as well, right?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, talk about friendships that last a lifetime. I mean, I always thought I'd meet cool, teammates and other athletes in my school that I keep in touch with for a very long time. But then, it really says something when, there are student athletes, both male and female, from other sports at other schools, even other conferences, and then you're talking about the national level, that I still keep in touch with to this day because of that organization. I mean, that really is saying something about how special it is. And the thing with SAC is that you can go, because, there's turnover every year, whether it be at the institutional conference or the national level. And it's it takes about 30 minutes for the new group to reacquaint and become best friends all over again, And so, because it's just the shared experiences and the shared struggle. And I think one really cool memory I have is my very first national meeting. And I walked in and, national meetings are very different because the dress is, business professional and, guys in suits and ties and dress shirts, and girls are in, skirts and pantsuits and business attire type dresses, and it's a new level, and you're at the NCAA headquarters in Indianapolis, and, you're with all these head officials for the NCAA, and catching up in that first meeting, the jargon alone was so overwhelming. If that wasn't enough, the fact that I was sitting with 31 other student athletes that were all the superhero of their conference. It was unbelievable. There were kids that were, starting their own not-for-profit, kids that were going to law school, kids that were already in law school, kids that were training for the Olympics. It was absolutely insane and a very humbling experience to meet these people, and yet having, despite all these different interests and backgrounds, to be able to have the same opinions on big ticket issues, speaking from a legislative perspective, in NCAA legislation, that was just really cool. It just proves that there's such a common bond that unites us all as student athletes, and at any level, Division I, II, or III. And that's just a really cool experience that I'll never forget. And also too, being able to just play a huge role, time demands. That's kind of the main mark that I kind of think about when I think about my time spent with SAC at all 3 levels. Is just, we put out that huge survey, and we got, a record-breaking response from student athletes about that, and really were able to kind of make some waves and create some headway as far as, making travel days an off day or not. You know what I mean? Things like that are completely normal to student athletes now. I'm I feel old because, back in my day, that was a hot topic for debate,
Right.
But it's really cool to know that student athletes are able to make a difference in make change, and to be able to know all that goes in behind the scenes, it makes me a heck of a lot more grateful for all the resources I had as a student athlete, all the opportunities I had, and for the experience as a whole, because I think it's really easy, it depends on everybody's end game, right? Like if you're a football player, just using college as a, segue into a stepping stone into, the NFL. That's a lot different than me, who's using it as, this is next level. I want to get the most out of this. I want to play. Maybe I'll play pro, maybe I won't, but this is the end of the end for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think for any student athlete, I would wish for them to have the sort of insight I was able to have, and sit in those conference calls and, be meeting, the president of the NCAA. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, you realize it's so much bigger than you, but yet every little piece is so essential to making it work the way it does. And, I'm not saying the NCAA is perfect. Obviously, I just went on a little tiny rant about it just 10 minutes ago.
Sure.
I think there's a long way to go. But at the same time, I really do think that for right now, it's doing the best that it can, and I think it will get better, and the student athlete experience will only improve from here on out. And I look forward to when that day comes and being able to say I was a part of it. Just being able to know that my name is logged somewhere in the history books with all of that, I think is one of the most special things I can take away from that entire experience.
I like how you're just so humble. Like, my name will be logged somewhere. Your name's like on the wall already at Missouri State. Like, there's a gigantic poster, and there's like All-American and academic All-American, and like here you are talking about going
besides the stuff on the court. Though, you know what I mean?
I'm giving you trouble, of course, because here you are talking about going into a meeting and meeting with these other kids from other conferences, other student athletes, and you're like these superheroes from the other conferences, and I'm like, do you not recognize what you were doing too? Like, here's someone that was you're talking about these words going over your head from a cell and molecular biology major that had a 3.9 GPA and is like just a rock star on the court, in the classroom, and like she's committing her time and doing all this stuff. And I still am in awe. Like, as you were talking about, I'm like, how in the world? Like, I'm thinking about when I was in college and I just went to watch sports. Like, I didn't miss much when I was at Missouri State. I had the pleasure of being there during Jackie Stiles' 4 years.
That's awesome.
I literally have seen so many of the Missouri State, quote unquote, glory days, I guess, like from either my time there or working at the Valley. Like, I could think back to seeing 4 years of Jackie Stiles, and the men's basketball, last time they were in the NCAA tournament going to the Sweet 16 was my sophomore year. And we all know how successful the baseball team has been. Yeah. So, and here I am seeing, like, as a employee of the conference, like this volleyball team that's like just killing it. And then here comes the baseball team again. And, just on and on and on.
Right.
Just so much success. And you've added to it. And like, literally, like, I've got I can just tell you that I've got a new respect for volleyball. Because I knew nothing about the sport before I got to the Valley. Like, that goes for a lot of sports, of course. Like, I couldn't tell anybody what a 6 rotation, I had no idea what that was, a 6 rotation player, or, I always thought it was just still bump, set, spike. Like, oh, I know what a kill is now. I know different stuff. But a lot of that's... You're not
alone there, though. You're not alone there.
Oh, trust me. I still, to this day, like, I'm going to high school wrestling, and for the first time, I'm like, I have no idea about wrestling, but I'm going to figure it out.
Oh, me too. Me too. Yeah, definitely. But
it's just interesting hearing your perspective and then what I know from an outsider, and just the way you went about it all is still to be commended for, because you did it in a way, you talked about being humble. That's literally why, like, I wanted to be able to tell your story about, your time there. So now we got through all of that. I'm curious. You talked about post-grad. What's next? Yeah. What's next on the agenda for Lily Johnson, possibly like in 2019 and going forward?
Sure. Okay. Well, so basically when I came into graduation in May, about 2-3 months prior, I was in February and March, and I had just applied for the NCAA postgraduate scholarship and the Missouri Valley Conference postgraduate scholarship. And those are contingent, obviously, upon you going to grad school, quite obviously. And I was told for the NCAA scholarship that you were able to defer that a year, just 1 year after, you're graduating, because sometimes kids have to take gap years, and that was nice because I was definitely going to have to do that because, for a lot of people don't know a whole lot about physician assistant school or what a PA is. Very similar to a nurse practitioner, except you're more broadly trained. And it's very similar to med school, except you basically you're just not taking the first 2 years redoing all the basic science courses. So You're doing 1 year of intense didactic curriculum in the classroom, and then you're out doing clinical rotations the next year and a half. So it's about a 2.5 year program in total. But the difference in applying for PA school is that you have to have, most different programs have different minimums, but most require a 1,000 hour minimum of paid healthcare experience with direct patient contact. Included somehow in there. For medical school, you don't have to have that. It looks better if you do, obviously, but PAs are the only programs that require that. And if you don't have it, they'll throw out your application right out the window. So I was like, well, that's great. I've, had an awesome time playing volleyball for 4 years, but now I have to get, on the same playing field as every other kid who's been working the past 4 years, building their resume for that, to stay competitive. And I need to take this gap year to do that. So I'm like, great, that's what I'll do. I'll graduate. I'll hopefully win these scholarships. If I do, that's awesome. I'll be in good standing with them. Take that gap year, apply, go. Great. Well, what happened, and what I mean by gap year is that I wouldn't, so the application cycle opens in April and closes in about October or November. Okay. So it has just ended. And that's for programs with 2019 start dates. My intention was to apply next April. So apply April of 2019, and then I would start in 2020.
Okay.
So I emailed the NCAA. It's awesome. I get the news that I won the scholarship. I'm like, this is cool, great. I emailed the NCAA. I already knew the MVCA had about a 3-year cushion to use that scholarship, so I knew it was good. Email the NCAA back, and they say, hey, thanks for contacting us. Just kidding. We changed the rule this year that you have to use it by August of 2019.
Oh, boy.
In order to get the money. And I already put in all the work to do this application. I mean, it was a pretty lengthy application. And I'm like, at this point, I'm like devastated. Okay. It's right before spring break. My family's about to take a trip to New York together. First time going to New York. I'm like so excited. And I get this news and I'm like freaking out. Okay. So,
oh, boy.
I immediately take out a pen and paper and I'm like, okay. So if I want this to happen, I have to do about what normally takes around a year and about half as much time to get my application together, a little less. Also while working and getting in 1,000 hours.
Oh, boy. And
by the way, also figuring out which schools I actually want to apply to and doing that research. So immediately I probably that night applied for about 8 to 10 different jobs. Springfield has 2 hospitals literally right in the back pocket of Missouri State, Mercy Hospital and then Cox. So neither were good opportunities. Got a job by the end of April. So then I'm doing the math, and I already had a list of schools. So at spring break, I basically spent like half stressing out and half being like, okay, try to enjoy your spring break, but then also like your future is literally in harm's way right now. Oh, so I was just like, okay, how are we going to do this? And between then and when I graduated, I had kind of made a list of schools. I'd done some research, had about 10 to 12 schools. They say the average applicant applies to like 7. I applied to 8. And I soon found out that that is not true because kids that I met in the interview process were applying to like 15 to 19 schools.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, okay, first of all, where's that money coming from? Second of all, what? Whatever. Anyway, so had that list, graduated. Before I graduated, I remember this, the day after I graduated, I was scheduled to work. And the only position open on the floor that I wanted at Mercy Hospital as a CNA, which is a certified nurse assistant, was a night shift position. So I trained on days and I trained just the weekends. So pretty much my last month and a half of college, I was working 12-hour shifts, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on the weekend so I could train in time. And then the day after I graduated, that night was my very first night shift. So I really hit the ground running. And that entire summer, I did the math over and over and over and over because every school that you apply to says, okay, you need this many hours by this date. You need this many hours by this date. So I knew for Missouri State, for example, their application deadline was July 15th. And for them, I only had to have 500 hours. So for sure, I had to hit 500 by July 15th. But then every other school, I kind of aligned all their dates, figured out that my 1,000 had to come by September 30th. So I started my job late April, had to have 1,000 hours by September 30th, did all the math in between. I was working, like in the month of June or July, I can count probably on 1.5 hands the number of off days I took. I was working 60-hour weeks, working overtime. There were a couple of weeks I went back-to-back 74-hour work weeks. I was like a zombie. And like looking back, I have no idea how I did it because I was in such a fog that I think I didn't know better. So I would just work 7 p.m., work all night till 7 a.m., come home, go to bed. But then I also was selfish because I wanted to be able to have a little bit of a day because I didn't want to just feel like I was working all the time, even though I was. So I was half in denial about that. I would sleep from 7:30 to 1:30, 2 o'clock-ish, then wake up, be a person for 3-4 hours, try to work out maybe, eat, that's important too. And then I had to report back to work no later than 6:30 to get my report and then start my shift. So I had no summer, and I'm not saying this for people to feel bad for me because I totally did this to myself and I recognize that. But I worked all summer. Worked August. I got my 1,000th hour on September 29th.
How about that?
So I did it, and I was yes. And then I actually submitted my application July 13th, I think. So I was able to then keep working because those schools are able to, you project your number of hours so they know on your application, hey, she's actually doing this work. And from then on, the interview started in September. So I interviewed with Missouri State in this program called Midwestern, which is about 20 minutes outside of Chicago. It's really cool. It's very unique. It's a pre-professional health studies school only. So it's there's a DO program, PA, PT, dental, optometry, pre-vet, all these things. So it's just for kids that are interested in medicine, which is really neat. Interviewed with those places. I think I said I applied to about 7. Applied to Stanford, Northwestern, Yale, interviewed at all 3 of those in October, and then interviewed at SLU, and I was going to interview at Creighton in Nebraska in November, but ended up canceling the ones at Creighton in Nebraska after I had started hearing back from the other schools and getting offers. So that was hard too, because then at that point I was working around my work schedule while also interviewing. Because the travel you have to pay for all yourself, of course, and coordinate that, which is fine. That was a lot of fun, actually. I love traveling. So being able to go to different parts of the country and meet all the applicants that I was, competing against, but also you want to be nice to them because they're paying attention to that and seeing how you're treating other people. It was cool. It's such a small world. I actually made some bizarre connections with friends that I had known at Missouri State with, childhood friends that were also applying to Yale, for example. It was nuts. But a really cool experience, doing all the interviews, also very stressful because, I was trying to put on my A game, but you're also wearing really nice clothes and having to travel. I felt like I was already out in the work world, which was kind of a good experience and a nice little wake up call. Hey, get yourself together here, Lily. But
you're an adult now. Congratulations.
Yeah, exactly. Right, you're graduating. This is the world. So doing all that, and then I started getting offers. So the way it works for PA school is that if a school offers you a seat, so and PA programs are, and I would never say this to a medical school student to their face, I have made that mistake before, and it gets very ugly. It's actually, statistically speaking, more difficult to get into a PA program than it is a medical school program for 2 reasons. First reason being is that there are less PA programs in the country than there are medical school programs. And then second reason is that PA classes are way smaller than med school classes. So a medical program might take 180 kids. The largest program I applied to took 86.
Oh, much more
and
selective.
The smallest program I applied to took 26. Wow. So your odds are much smaller, and it's not uncommon to have applicants. I met people that were 26, 27 years old who had been working and they had 19,000 patient care hours to their name. Applying for the 3rd year in a row, so wow. It was scary. And I was there's a very real chance that I could have gone through all this work to be eligible to use the scholarship money. And then I fail and I not get it anywhere, and I have to be okay with that. And again, that's my, for athletics right there, because I think that teaches you a lot of good lessons ahead of time.
Absolutely.
With, touching back on those gut wrenching losses, very similar concepts.
Absolutely.
And so I was prepared for that, but got very lucky that, a lot of my interviews went well. And honestly, I enjoyed the interview process because I like talking, obviously. I mean, how long has this conversation gone on for? But it was fun. And, everybody has their interviews different, whether it was, you're with applicants and you're facing 5 of the people on the board, or you're going through multiple mini interviews where you rotate rooms and you're answering brand new questions about ethics and about, your experiences. It's so different. And it was a lot of fun, challenging, but a good kind of challenge and fun to learn about all the new programs through it. And then when you get offered a seat somewhere, you have 14 days to either decline that seat or accept it. But if you accept it, all these programs aren't stupid. They know that you're applying to other places, so they want to know that you're serious about them. So what they do is they make you pay a non-refundable seat deposit that if you end up going there, it'll go to your tuition. So It's kind of beneficial.
Okay.
But if you say, hey, I'm coming, and then you don't come, that's a bummer, but hey, at least I got your money, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of strategy that goes into that. So I got accepted into Missouri State's program and Midwestern's program on the same day, which was very exciting. And I knew I was going to take my first offer just to cover myself, because until I didn't know, I had interviews that were yet to come that I had no idea how they were going to go, So, because I had both those offers on the same day, I was able to compare them and take a really critical look and say, hey, I was really impressed with Midwestern's program and I really see that as a better fit. So it was sad, but I wrote Missouri State and told them that I'd be declining my offer and thank you very much for the consideration, and put my seat deposit down at Midwestern. So did that, kept interviewing, actually got waitlisted by Yale, which was okay. Got into Stanford and got into SLU. Northwestern, I have not heard back from yet because they send out final decisions in January. So that's kind of a waiting game. Mm-hmm. But was very excited right now. I'm to the point. So I've kind of weeded programs out and I said, no, thank you to SLU. And I'm about to tell Midwestern, hey, you could open up my seat to another applicant because pretty much there's no, after those 14 days and if you've paid, really the power is all yours because there are horror stories of kids, the day before classes start getting let's say a program starts in June and you're committed to going there. So the day before it starts, you get a call from the program that starts in August saying, hey, we've pulled you off the alternate list. Do you want to come? And it's your dream school. You could literally that day tell your program that's starting the next day, hey, I'm leaving. Sorry. Wow. Tell the next person in line they can come anyway. And then you go off to your new school. There have been stories of kids driving from Colorado to Chicago in a day with nothing just to make it for the first day of classes and orientation just to start that program. So really the power is all yours up to then. So if I really wanted to, I could hold on to every offer and then just the day before, if I was a really mean person, tell them I'm not coming. But there's no reason to do that.
Sure.
But point being is that right now I have my technically my seat at Stanford's program and at Midwestern's program, and I'm waiting to hear back from Northwestern. And then in January, I'll make my final decision as far as where I will be going. But right now, Stanford is my top choice. It is pricey, it is expensive, but it's you're paying for what you're getting out of it. It's an investment, and Palo Alto is one of the most expensive cities to live in the country. So that's difficult. But, at the same time, it's the way I see it. I'm I'm very fortunate to come out of undergrad with no debt, and I want to invest in myself and give myself, the best possible opportunity to, achieve in a new season of life here and in a new career path and a new passion of mine. So to me, it's like a no-brainer that even though you have a little debt coming out of it, it's very much well worth it. But like I said, I still want to go through the process the right way and not get ahead of myself. And if I get in Northwestern, that's a whole new ball game, But at this point, I'm really excited about my options. And if I go to Stanford, I would start school in August of 2019. So I would be moving out there around that time and finding an apartment. At some point in July, probably. Yeah. So that's the rough plan right now in a nutshell. The long story, not so short, in my typical fashion. But yeah, that's the process, and it's been a whole whirlwind and stressful and crazy.
Yeah, I was going to say it sounds like I'm sort of stressed because I'm thinking to myself, all that you've went through, just the working to figure all the hours out, and then the process of the interviews with the school, like I would be a nervous wreck if I was like, okay, now I'm going to Northwestern or to Stanford, and I got to figure all this out. In addition, I got to do well in these classes that I'm doing as well. So, is it a tinge of nervousness? Like, you're probably more excited than anything is what I'm thinking.
I was. The only thing I was really nervous about is that I and I mean this in the most non-assuming way possible, but after coming off, I was most scared that after coming off a very successful academic and athletic career, that if I just expected to get in somewhere because, oh, well, naturally that's what I'll do, and I didn't want to get into that mentality, because if I didn't, because I knew that was a very real chance. Like, for example, Stanford, they had about 5,000 kids apply. They had 120 kids come interview, and they took 26.
Wow.
And I was very fortunate to be one of those 26. But I realized that the chance for me not getting in anywhere was very real. That was a very real possibility. And I was nervous that I would just be totally devastated, for like the first time. And like, since, the gut-wrenching losses kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was what I was most nervous about. Once I got into the interview, I was mainly able to kind of channel that out of the way and really just kind of hype myself up. But I told everybody that my two biggest flaws as an interviewee are that I take too long to get to the point. and sometimes you're like, yeah, you're telling me that. And sometimes things come out a little less gracefully than I would like for them to, simply because
human.
I'm just excited. I'm talking quickly and
you're
whatnot.
Human.
So
we all have different personalities. You have your own.
It's true. And the funny story that I touch on is that in one of my interviews that I got an offer, like cried in it, and that's a longer story. Bottom line is they asked me to speak to an experience I had volunteering, and it's a really heartwarming story about this little girl that I met with the Boys and Girls Club, and I never have cried before telling it, but I think it was the stress of the situation.
Yeah.
I just got super emotional, and I wasn't like sobbing, but like, your voice does that like really gross thing where like it just starts like sounding different and weird, and like your tears are like slowly like leaking out of your eyeballs. Like it was that kind of thing. And I only had 30 minutes to be in the interview, and I'm like, gosh, like I only have like 5 minutes left. Like I need to get myself together here and like salvage anything that I've sacrificed in my character to these people, like crying in front of them, right? So, but no, it ended up turning out for the best because they took me. So the interview process is a lot of fun. Looking back, of course, I mean, and the time being, it was like, wow, well, I mean, it got to the point where I was like sad when I would leave a school, because I'm like, I really enjoyed my time here. I really enjoyed learning about this program and getting to know these people. And, I may never be coming back here again, so that's a very big reality to the whole process, but, also the beauty of it too, and why it's so unique.
That's fun. So it's interesting. All that you just went through, there's not a touch of volleyball in there. So there is no, have you pretty much said, you know what, this is what I'm focusing on, and volleyball now is strictly a recreational thing, or? Yeah,
it's interesting you mentioned that. So my last interview was November 9th, and I transitioned out of my job working as a CNA November 8th.
Okay.
And that was mainly because of burnout, just sheer burnout. And I wanted to, I still want to work in healthcare, obviously. But I want a different kind of side to medicine. And I knew that I needed to get back off. And I didn't realize how much I had missed volleyball until I spent so much time away from it.
Yeah.
Because it was all work, no play, and
right.
In a very literal sense of the phrase. But currently, I was like, I don't want to work at the hospital right now, but I want to still be able to do something that involves me in it. So I'm coaching for a local club in Springfield, an 11s team. So I have all these little kiddos, and none of them are like actually 11. They're like 8, 9, 10 years old. So that's a total blast. So
awesome.
It's like purely the fundamentals, and like I'm trying to get myself out of like the college practice mentality, because like when things get silly, I get like stressed out because I'm like still in the player's mentality, like, oh, coach is going to get mad. And I'm like, wait, I am the coach. So it's like I can control this, but like also the need to have fun. So it's a totally different kind of setting, but it's bringing me back to the time, when I was playing U11s, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm doing that, and I'm also, getting private lessons in Springfield, which is good, and just kind of meeting new people and getting to help girls, get to that next level. And When I was a player, one of my favorite things was getting to talk to younger girls after the matches and giving them advice and talking to their parents and working with them at the summer camps. Like that was always a highlight of the experience to me. And doing what I'm doing now, coaching and lessons, I feel that I'm able to continue that and to continue to help people, get to where I was at and achieve more than what I did. And so that's kind of a special, like I said, full circle kind of thing for me. I keep touching back on the full circle thing, but it's funny to me in hindsight, how much that has played a role in my life and all facets of it.
Yeah.
So then when I get back to Springfield, so I spent the holiday season at home. My lease is still going in Springfield because I was working obviously this whole past year. I will be transitioning into, hopefully I'm interviewing for it. It's a medical scribe position in the emergency room at Mercy. So the shifts are shorter, but you're looking around a computer basically and following a physician and charting all of their notes and taking, notes on the patient and taking histories and things like that for when, they're admitting new patients. So again, like I said, a totally different side of medicine, and I'll get to see some crazy things, I'm sure, working in an ER. But I'm looking forward to it. And you mentioned the volleyball piece. In the midst of all that, as I've been home for break, I got a phone call actually from Stokes, and she was like, hey, there are some agents that are asking about you. And I didn't sign anything formally to do it, but I actually was put in touch with a guy, and I had quite a few opportunities to play overseas because the pro season runs October to April basically. And there's recruiting obviously before October, but then there's also winter recruiting to fill in for injuries and to fill in for kids that leave and things of the like. So that was what people were contacting me for. So it was just, 3 or 4 months. And not to sound selfish or that's all about the money, but at that point, my mentality was, look, I'm very satisfied with where I've left off in my volleyball career. And the only way I would go play pro and, go spend that time overseas when I could otherwise be earning money and playing volleyball and working in the hospital is if the money I would be making from that would be enough to make it worth investing into school. And at this stage in the game, a lot of teams just don't have a whole lot of money left over, and that's okay. If I was taking a whole nother gap year like I originally planned to do, then, maybe I would go kill some time playing overseas, in Germany or whatnot.
Yeah.
But at this stage in the game, it's like, I gotta put me first and realize what's going to put me in the best position to succeed in school in a very rigorous program, very shortly here. And I felt okay with the decision to move away from that. And it was cool to know that I had the chance to do it, because that was a big area of, I guess, anxiety you could say for me, was having to choose between school and the scholarship money and playing pro. But I don't regret my decision as any day of the week. I think I went with my gut. I did the right thing. And, I had the chance now and it didn't work out, but that's okay because I can stay involved in other ways. And I have other passions, volleyball is just one of the many of them. So, and I'm fortunate to be able to say that because I know not everybody is able to say the same thing. So I'm in a good spot. I like where I'm at, Derek. That's the
awesome.
Bottom line.
Hey, that's you literally, as you were telling all that, is like one reason why I'm like doing this podcast is like to tell people, like I recorded a little demo thing, is like everyone has a different path to success and it's up to you to find your path. So you've like literally like gone through and just outlined what yours was. And I'm hopeful like other people tell me like how they achieved and how they got there, because we all get there in a different way. So
definitely. You said that's a perfect way to say it.
I can appreciate it because literally like I saw you on the volleyball court doing it and just being so humble, working so hard, but still balancing it with success in the classroom. That's what I always knew. I mean, just from being an outsider, but to hear it straight from you talking about it and what it's been like after Missouri State, I'm sure for you looking back on it now, you can like take some pride in it. And as you mentioned, being able to have your name in the history books, so to speak, regardless if it's volleyball or if it's your contributions to SAC or things like that, or all the other things you've been involved in, that goes to show how well you've become well-rounded. And that's, you just said it there, thinking about going to play volleyball overseas versus what you want to do for your future. You got your head on straight. I mean, I'm sure your parents are proud. I'm lucky to get to know you and to be in touch with you still, because it's kind of like, man, this not only like just from seeing you, we're graduates at the same school. So I'm like, yeah, she's one of our famous alums. She's just like killing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. So, well, I've taken like almost an hour and a half recording, so I'm going to wrap this up. I got 5 questions. Fine. I have 5 questions I'm going to ask you. You cannot think about them for too long, okay? You have to answer with the first thing that comes to mind, all right?
Deal. Let's do it.
All right. One thing that Lily Johnson cannot live without.
Ooh, I would say that's the first thing pops in my mind, music. I am an avid Spotify user, and I milk that student discount. I'm still technically a student, so I milk that. Couldn't go a day without it. All my friends make fun of me because I have really weird taste. Like, I could listen to like an EDM song for like 1 minute, and then the next minute I'm listening to like alternative or like even country songs. It's really weird. But
did you
big
do
music fan. I'm hoping to make it to Lollapalooza one of these days, or some sort of festival, like the Hangout Fest that's in like Gulf Shores every year. So one of these days I'll make it out. But music is absolutely the cornerstone of my existence by far.
Did you do the Spotify yearly music recap little thing?
Oh, you bet I did.
So what's top of your list? What's top of your list? Just a few of the songs.
Okay. Let's get to it.
I'm curious now. I got to know.
Okay. See, the thing is, a big One Republic fan. So their song Connection, they just released it. That's a new one. Love One Republic. I actually saw them in concert. And then I'll give you a weird one. Oh, here's another one. Arizona, like pretty much their entire last album is on my top songs. And Arizona is like an alternative kind of group.
Okay.
And they're kind of brand new because they just kind of broke out and started touring and everything. So that is another one. And then Kygo, pretty much Happy Now, his most recent turn. I'm a big Kygo fan. That's more like the dance pop kind of side of things. People are like, that's weird, but I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm new, so it works out. Yeah, those are 3 of my top songs that are on there, or slash groups.
All right. We got music suggestions from Lily Johnson. All right. Question 2, outside of volleyball, take volleyball out of the equation. What's one thing that you miss most about Missouri State?
I miss, this is easy. So we have like a phenomenal fountain on campus, and you know this.
Yes, I do.
But I like our entire North Mall. I always loved walking to class along that. And because you see, it's like it's an open, it seems like it goes for like 200-300 yards when you're on it. But like you just see like everybody on it because everybody has classes in that same kind of area. Mm-hmm. But I always loved walking by it, and I loved walking by when the fountain was on, and there was like fountain day. Whenever it would get turned on, there was a big like celebration, and people brought out food and stuff. So there was always something like happy going on in that area, and I always just loved it. It was kind of like what Missouri State's kind of known for. Yep. So I do miss the fountain, and it's nice living in Springfield still because I can still stop by and see it from time to time.
Yeah, I'm sure you're welcome back anytime.
Yes, I hope so.
Okay, question 3. If Lily Johnson could go back in time, she would.
Oh, man. I would. Okay. Can it be volleyball related?
Yeah, this could be anything.
I would tell myself to be more confident my freshman year and to speak up more because I think that a lot of the reason, I mean, you look at all 4 of my years, and that was by far the least successful year, and I don't mean to say that negatively. But that was the really defining year where I kind of realized that's all the things that I wanted in a college career. And so I'm thankful to have had that experience because it was a little bit rougher of a time, kind of growing into the atmosphere of college athletics. But I wish I would have stepped up more and not been so, whether it be athletics and academics, I mentioned with my major, being afraid to like totally commit to it. I wish I just known like, hey, you can do this and you're totally capable, and just trust yourself and things will work out, and have a voice on the court, and don't be afraid of people think of you, because at the end of the day, it's your life and it's your path, like you were saying earlier. So just go for it and have no regrets about it, and say what you need to say. And if it works out, great. And if it doesn't, you learn from it and move on.
There you go. Question 4. Guilty pleasure food or meal for Lily Johnson?
Oh, I love Chinese food so much. So Chinese or Thai food, like, did you see how fast that was? I didn't have to take any time. So like Springfield is known for its Chinese restaurants.
Absolutely.
And cashew chicken was actually invented in Springfield, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So I got my entire team like hooked on this one restaurant. It's called Teriyaki House. It's off Glenstone. If you ever want to go there, Teriyaki House. It is amazing. But we also have found a bunch of other like hole in the wall restaurants. This is a really good Thai place that's really close to campus called Rama Thai Cafe, and like pretty much the entire athletic department, it seems, goes there all the time. But yeah, two of my number 1 and 2 favorite places to go for Chinese food would be Rama Thai and Teriyaki House, by far, hands down.
I was in Springfield not this weekend, the 22nd, went down for the basketball game, and I didn't even think about it. Like, so a buddy of mine who had not been to JQH Arena, like we graduated together. He graduated in May, I graduated in December, but we were roommates. And he had never been to JQH Arena. He'd moved to Atlanta, moved back. He's from the Kansas City area, and he's now back in the Kansas City area. So it's like, dude, we got to go to a game. I got to get you down there to see the arena. It's open for 10 years, for crying out loud.
Right.
And we did. But I was down there, and like, this was literally the first trip I've been down there, and I get down there at least a couple times a year now. And I didn't think about even eating Chinese food. Go figure. So I got an alumni board meeting coming up middle of January. So I may have to try and check out the Thai House or some of these other places you're recommending.
You should do it. Text me before you go, and I will give you a list.
All right.
I'm dead serious.
All right. I'll have to do that. All right. Last question. I talked a lot about a lot of your accolades. Actually, I didn't talk a lot about your accolades. Just talk about what you achieved, but you won so many awards. And I saved this one for last on purpose because it's one of the things that sort of makes you stand out because you took it all in stride. You mentioned being humble, but I mean, Player of the Year, Freshman of the Year, All-American, and it goes on and on. Academic All-American, so much in the record books with your name attached to it. And one of them I didn't even mention, you were named a finalist or semifinalist. I can't think of correctly how you felt. I know you got to go to the ceremony for NCAA Woman of the Year.
Yes.
All of those accolades related to volleyball, related to, your career at Missouri State. Can you pick one that you feel the most proud of?
I think, well, I mean, that's really tough because a couple come to mind, like, for different reasons. So, I mean, like if you look at athletics, purely athletics, Player of the Year, All-American, that means a lot to me. Like my freshman year when I found out Stokes called me to her office, I was so scared. I'm like, I am in trouble. We're not even in season anymore. And she's calling me to her office. Something's happened. There's a fire somewhere. Then I caused it. I don't know what it is. But, and she told me that's my first year I'd made All-American, honorable mention, but All-American nonetheless. And at that point, I was so naive. I didn't know anything about the process. I was blown away. I'm like, really, me? Like, I really did that good that thought I should be that? You know what I mean? And so that's a very unique memory that I have. And then to go and do it 3 more years and finally to crack into that third team my last year is something I'm so proud of. Because as a player, a lot of people were like, well, is there really anything much you can get better at? Like distant relatives and they don't know much about volleyball. And I just thought it was funny because I took it as a huge compliment, obviously. But I knew my own weaknesses, and my error percentages and my blocking and passing. And I knew where I needed to be to do what I wanted to do. But also not letting that occupy my mind the whole season because it's a team sport and I wanted our team to go far, and we did. So that was a challenge, and that's something I overcame, and I was proud of that. And then, Academic All-American of the Year. I mean, to be able to tie in what I came to school for in the first place, which was school, and then to also be so lucky to have had a prolific athletic career, and then to be better than any other Division I player in volleyball that year. Like, that just blows my mind. Again, that I was someone that people thought of me that highly to be named that. And I'm proud that I was able to stay committed to academics. And then I'm proud that I was a citizen scholar at Missouri State because that just proved that, I was able to also put in the time with the community and they represent the 3 pillars of Missouri State's unique public affairs mission, which are ethical leadership, cultural competence, and community engagement.
Look at you.
So, yeah, right. Oh, I will rep those pillars till I die. Like, I'm very passionate about our public affairs mission. But to know that I was also able to do that and be one of the 5 students selected as a recipient, like, that's really cool. So it's hard for me to do that, but I think Woman of the Year, like you mentioned, it really encompasses all of that, which is why that would be my selection. Because, again, similar to when I told the story about going to the national SAC meetings and being surrounded by just these incredible people, there were 581 total nominees for Women of the Year this year, and I was selected as a top 30, and there were 9 finalists. So technically, like, top 30, you weren't finalists, so semi-finalists, whatever you want to call it. Then there were 9 finalists, and the winner ended up being this incredible human being / athlete who's a track and field jumper at Georgia, who went to the Rio Olympics, is going to the Olympics in Tokyo. Like, she's amazing. Just won, if you keep up with track and field, she just won the Bowerman, which she beat out Sydney McLaughlin, who is like also an incredible Olympian person. But anyway, like, she totally deserved it, is my bottom line. But being in the same room as those other 29 women and like knowing everybody else's accomplishments and bios, and again, knowing that a committee and multiple people thought I fit into that demographic was so cool. And just knowing that everything I had done had kind of led to this, it was just, I just had to make myself kind of step back at certain times in that weekend and like take it all in, because I didn't want to miss a single moment. And that was really the time where my family could come and I could come together and we could just celebrate and like really reflect on everything that had happened in the past 4.5 years, good and bad, you know, because it all plays a role, and it all, like I said, everything for a reason. So, it was just a really emotional kind of time, very humbling, and be able to walk across that stage and accept the award and then celebrate with my coaches and family. It was really surreal, and a great way to kind of cap off the final page of the book for my collegiate athletics career. So couldn't have asked for anything more, and that have to be my top pick. And I didn't mean to, brag or like speak pretentious about the things that I recapped earlier. I was just, kind of going through my thought process, because there's a lot of things that I'm proud of for different reasons. But I think, being a Woman of the Year candidate, the name kind of speaks for itself, so grateful that I've had such support from Missouri State, from the Missouri Valley Conference, and from all people around me, just pushing me every day in the classroom and on the court. Like, not a single one of those people I could have done it without. So, and that's me kind of before I get like emotional about it, because I know I would if I kept talking about it. Just like goes to show that like you said, the path. I loved how you said that. Like, everyone has their own path. You meet everybody along the way for a reason. I think that everybody's got a certain role to play in your life, whether that be permanent or temporary. And I can absolutely advocate for that and how it's shown in my life. So very grateful for all the experiences, and I'm so excited for what's ahead, because I know at this rate it's going to be a lot of fun from here on out. So I'm excited, looking forward to 2019 and what it's going to bring.
You've been known to be a hard worker, and it shows. I mean, I'm still thinking about that story you telling about working all those hours to get 1,000 hours in, and you pulled it off, because why not? Of course you're going to pull it off. I mean, you've worked so much harder doing everything else before. Nothing's going to change. So I'm excited to see what happens for you in the future, and don't stop tweeting, because that's how my way of staying connected to a lot of people is. So I know you won't have the time to do it, but still, it's always great to see you pop up on the timeline. And
absolutely, I will do that for you. Randomly
make sure I check the Instagram and Facebook feed just to see the random picture from you and your sister and your brother and their kids and all that. It always makes me laugh, because I'm like, you're not just volleyball Lily Johnson. You got a family. You're just like every other human out there.
So. Well, and I'm a brand new aunt too.
How about that?
In 2 days, my brand new niece will be 1 month old. So
that's awesome.
I am now aunt to a niece and a nephew, so that's also an exciting development that I didn't mention before. And
you can spoil them and not get in trouble and say, "Oh, I got this for them." They're like, "Why'd you do that?" Because that's what being an aunt is all about. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah. Well, hey, I appreciate you selecting me for this, and it's been awesome getting to catch up. And thank you for allowing me to share some of my experiences, and for being interested in that, and for all the things you said about me. I'm not sure I deserve it. I know you'd probably criticize me for saying that, but the high praise is so appreciated, and it's good to know that people notice. You know what I mean? So thank you, and thank you for all you've done for me while I was playing, and for all you continue to do now, even when I'm still out of it. So that means a lot, Derek, and I appreciate you, and so does my family.
Well, there you go. Quite a story from one of the most impressive student athletes to come through Missouri State University and the Missouri Valley Conference, the now cell and molecular biology graduate who's working towards an advanced degree in her future career. I said this to her during our discussion, but from the outside looking in, we only know what we can see on the surface, right? But once you learn how hard she works, how hard Lily Johnson works, you can really tell that her work ethic extends from what you see on the volleyball court and what we all know just from seeing her perform, but how hard she then worked in the classroom to now her life. After completing her undergraduate degree, you learn that there's really a lot for her. There's a lot of work that she did to earn her success, and she certainly wasn't afraid of doing that work. I hope you enjoyed this 2-part episode featuring Lily Johnson. If you have feedback, questions, suggestions, please feel free to shoot me a tweet at DDocket or leave a rating or review on iTunes, Apple Podcast, or wherever you choose to listen on several of the podcast platforms that this podcast is now available. Thanks so much for listening to Persons of Interest.